And welcome back to the Print Live. This is our election result day special live. And of course, the election in Haryana has turned out to be very surprising, at least from the trends that are coming in so far, they seem to be very different from what we were reading in the polls until 2 days ago. Very different from what journalists had been saying. The BJP right now is showing to have a lead in about 49 seats, the Congress leading on about 35 seats. And to discuss a little more about the Haryana elections and subsequently also about the elections in Jammu Kashmir, I have with us Professor Surinder Jotka. He is an eminent sociologist from Jawaharlal Nehru University. Thank you for joining us, sir.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And we also have in the print studio today Mr. Sushil Manav, a senior colleague of mine who reports from Haryana. Professor, my first question to you, and I am compelled to ask you a very election seat related question, although we will move to sort of more socio-political questions subsequently. But this is obviously, as I said, a result, at least from the looks of it, what it seems to be right now, a result that none of us were anticipating. What are your broad takeaways from the trends that we have now, if they hold true?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's kind of very surprising because I mean, even BJP sympathizers would not have predicted this. Most journalists, people who have been on the ground, they would say that we still need to hold on. And I was looking at the rounds that have been counted because Haryana is a region which kind of, could vary from within one constituency. There could be three different patterns, rural, urban areas, who is voting for whom. So we'll have to, I think, still wait for some time to be able to show that these are the real trends. But obviously, BJP is not going to be doing as badly, or even if it doesn't form government, it would be a formidable force in the state. Um, it might also win if the general kind of trend go. Normally, early 2-3 hours trends kind of hold through the day. So yes, I mean, we'll have to kind of then obviously look at the details, empirical details. But the immediately that comes to my mind is obviously perhaps Congress was uh, focusing on kind of consolidation of Jat vote, and that perhaps could have boomerang ranged, and BJP was working on ground in a more systematic manner because they are organizationally much stronger than Congress in the region. And that is something that Congress leaders have also been saying. And their organizations might have, in some sense, focused, targeted specific communities, specific groups, and that perhaps has been a kind of uh, reason for this positive outcome for them. But we don't really know still. I think it's too early to analyze and conclude.
Before I move to Sushil Manav, I want to also ask you that um, in the last 10 years, with the BJP becoming as dominant a phenomenon in Haryana as it has, a lot of people were also questioning whether this entire dichotomy between Jat and non-Jats in Haryana can continue to be a viable lens to look at Haryana's politics. And now, if we see if these results hold true and the Jat community, the BJP manages to sort of relegate the Jat community to some extent politically, what does that say about the socio-political landscape of Haryana?
Yeah, this is a question I was also kind of thinking about. I mean, many people were saying that they're real issues and those issues concern everyone.
Hmm.
But at the end of the day, perhaps, this whole question of at the local level, community dynamics are also related to real issues. And this is something that perhaps we can't ignore. And the way caste communities function in the political arena also, in some sense, uh, has consequences for urban settlements and the manner in which rural societies organize. So I think these are important issues, and people who work on communities, they say that how in Indian society that kind of individualization has not happened. People still look at each other, they help each other on the basis of their network in shape, and that becomes very critical source for them. It's not simply a matter of identity, but it also becomes a kind of a material resource through which they can get their things done, or through which they can kind of protect themselves or move ahead, and even institutions are caste based, as you know, even colleges and bureaucracy, everything is kind of structured around those identities. So people look at those, perhaps, real processes, and perhaps, on that basis they have chosen to kind of, uh, perhaps the non-Jat vote, as the BJP was trying to manage, has perhaps been able to do that.
Hmm. So, Shilji, my question is actually the same for you. There, of course, in the last 1.5 2 hours, there's been a complete turnaround in what we are seeing in Haryana. This entire distinction between Jat, non-Jat votes, where do you see the Jat community politically now in Haryana if these results hold true? Because now, if these results are indeed true, then we will see about 10 years of the political relegation of the Jats, which were not just a dominant community but also a politically hegemonic community in Haryana. So, where does this leave Jats in Haryana?
See, if we look at the results of Lok Sabha elections, so in that election, Congress plus Aam Aadmi Party was had on 46 seats out of 90. So in that election, Jats plus Dalits, this worked for the Congress, I suppose. And now this time, the BJP has they have basically, I would say, promised sub-classification of the Dalits. So in sub-classification, the I mean, A and B category of Dalits. We are, better off in the jobs and society. So maybe this has worked for the BJP also, because if a section of Dalits have voted for them, OBCs were already voting for BJP even in the Lok Sabha elections. So this can be one reason. But one thing is very important. If we look at the voters turnout data, so even in the Jat heartland, whether it is Deswali belt of Sonipat Jajjar and Rohtak, or Mangad belt of Kathal and Jean, or the Bagdi belt of Sirsa, Fatehbad, Hisar and Bhiwani, the turnout is less than what it was in 2019. It's very surprising. If there was really any anger among Jats against the BJP, why didn't they came out? That means the Congress has not been able to translate that anger into the voter turnout.
But from your understanding of how the Congress was campaigning, do you think it failed to take this point of even this narrative of anti-incumbency to the ground on to that extent?
See, as Professor said, that BJP's campaign was very much organized, and Congress perhaps was, maybe it was the party was taking it for granted after the Lok Sabha elections, because uh, assembly elections in Haryana are normally held 3 or 4 months after the Lok Sabha election. It was in 2014, also 19, 2009 also. So maybe after these Lok Sabha results, when they got 40 lead on 48 seats, they were taking it for granted. But the BJP never gave up. So this can be one reason.
Professor, if you can just explain a little bit of the urban-rural dynamic in Haryana, because of course in every other state that counts for a lot, but in Haryana we see the politics in agrarian rural societies play out entirely differently from what it does in urban societies, and it's in the urban areas where the BJP initially had the lead. So if you can explain this dynamic to our viewers, and what does 10 years of BJP rule in the state and now possibly a third term, uh, how does that change that dynamic?
Normal analysts of Haryana try to divide the state into 3 or 4 sub-regions. They would talk about GT Road Belt as one region, then Deswal and Bagdi and southern Haryana.
Yeah.
So that perhaps holds good at some level. But if you look at the rural-urban divide, that seems to be more or less common across the state. Haryana received lot of migrant population from Western Punjab, and it was kind of allocated uh, houses and land in mostly in urban centers. They also were settled in rural areas of Haryana from where Muslims had migrated out. But most of the urban centers, not only on the GT road, but also cities like Faridabad, cities like Rohtak, Jeend, Sirsa, all of them has a large proportion of urban of Punjabis who are mostly Khatris and Arodas, and these are kind of trading castes. Many of them were given land, and they have tended to move from villages to the cities. Even those who were earlier living in rural areas, many of them have migrated to cities and kind of diversified into business activities. So across the state, in urban areas, you have significant proportion of Punjabis who are relatively well-to-do. They are not very poor. Very few among them would be very poor. Along with them, you have the old trading castes of Haryana, who are Banyas and Mahajans. Plus, obviously, there is a section of Dalits, and there are new migrants who are prosperous Jats and other people from rural areas. That migration is continuing. But rural-urban divide still remains very, very, very significant. Jats, for example, would be much larger proportion of Jats would be still in rural areas. And apart from Jats are not the only agricultural caste in Haryana. There are Gujars, there are Rhodes, there are Kambos, and other OBCs also. They own land. In some areas, those so-called OBCs are also the locally dominant caste, but they are all either Jats or OBCs, plus obviously the scheduled castes. So rural profile is very different from urban profile of the state. And I think most of the initial influence of BJP, which was earlier called Jansan, was among the Punjabis and a little bit among the traders. But Punjabis also have had Congress voters. It's not like any section votes exclusively for one party. You would see a larger proportion might be voting for them. But that is a clear division. And urban population, particularly these traders, they also fear Jats, because Jats are a kind of dominant caste, and that is the kind of divide that BJP was able to, in some sense, exploit or work with for the past 15 years. That's why for the first time they had a Punjabi chief minister, Khattar, and he continued for nearly 9 years plus, and now they have an OBC. OBC is a much more diverse composition, because OBC is not one single sociological category. These are small jatis, and they're all listed as OBCs, so they're not mobilized as OBCs. So OBC voting is likely to be far more diverse than the Punjabi urban trading caste voting, Khatri Arodas and other kind of Punjabis who are living in, or the other urban trading caste people.
So, Shelby, I'd like to bring you in on the same issue. How has the BJP over the years, because it clearly has, I don't immediately have the numbers right now for the trends right now, but the BJP has managed to make inroads even into the rural space in Haryana over the years. In fact, in 2014, we also saw Jats be quite enthused by the BJP phenomenon, by the Modi phenomenon, so to speak. How has the BJP been able to sort of bridge that divide and also make significant inroads in rural Haryana?
See, in my opinion, it's largely because of importing candidates from the other parties. I'll give you some examples of this present election.
Hmm.
Bhiwani, uh, JP Dalal is leading from Luharu.
Hmm.
He is a congressman. He was with the Congress previously, earlier with Bansilal. Similarly, Shruti Chaudhary, she is leading from Tosham. Tosham is totally a rural constituency, no city associated with that. So she was also with the Congress. Then this ex jailer Sunil Sangwan, so he is leading from Charki Dadri. His father Satpal Sangwan, he was earlier with Bansiral and then with Congress. So similarly, there is another constituency in this Bhiwani district. So Badra, there also BJP person is leading, who was earlier with the Congress. So BJP after 2014, the BJP has managed to basically induct people from INLD, from Congress to its fold, and that has helped the party greatly. Uh, Across the state, you will see people from other parties. They have come to BJP, and they have been given tickets. They were given ticket in 2019 also, this time also. So this is one reason that they have been able to make inroads in rural Haryana. That's what I feel.
Right. Professor, one, do you agree with Sushilri's assessment analysis? And two, I have to sort of broaden the scope of my of the conversation a little bit, and because especially in the aftermath of the Lok Sabha elections, the narrative, at least the media narrative, was that this entire model of bringing in rebels from other parties, turncoats, and so on, was not working for the BJP. It showed that the party has kind of compromised ideologically. That was the narrative in Uttar Pradesh. That was the narrative in Maharashtra. And these are just a couple of examples. So, do you think that that entire analysis that we came up with, that these turncoats don't, they kind of put off the voter, do you think that was a little premature or lazy? Um, in the
So I
aftermath of the
think
Lok Sabha?
this was also the time when BJP mainstreams itself, and the mainstream of Indian democratic politics was the Congress party. So at some level, hello.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah. So at some level, they, in some sense, became like the Congress party. So ideology would also work at some level, but in the political field, they would be flexible. They would accommodate all kinds of people.
Yeah.
And there was a genuine appeal of Mr. Modi in 2014, and in 2019, the Pulwama played a very significant role in mobilizing Jats also, because they have been part of the armed forces and stuff like that. So also it gave an entry point to the BJP, because BJP is organizationally much better than any other party. And RSS has been working on ground. They opened schools in villages, and those schools also have a kind of ideological appeal to people. And there is larger, what one would call as Hindutvaization of
Hmm.
rural Haryana that I've seen has happened over the past 20-25 years. Haryana used to be very quote unquote irreligious place. Many rural Haryana, there would be hardly any temples. People would not really identify themselves with any religion. There was influence of Arya Samaj in Rohtak,
Yeah.
and mostly among the Jats. But most of Haryana was kind of, they were agriculturists, and they did not have any kind of, but over the past 20-25 years, there has been a kind of religious fervor in rural areas all across northwest India, Haryana, Western UP. You can see that, and some of us have also studied that phenomenon. It could also express itself in deras, and dera culture has become very common. People in rural Haryana would also go to Radha Swami Dera, Sirsa Dera, and many other small gurus who have become very popular in the region. And they perhaps have also become significant in the electoral process, given that Ram Rahim was given parole again, and BJP works through all channels. It's not simply kind of relying on political leaders appealing to people. Their channels are many, and I think that is where perhaps BJP had an upper hand than Congress. They were organizationally very astute, and they targeted individual communities. And most
Yeah.
importantly, because they have been in power and they are currently in power, you can get things done from them. They are the
Mm-hmm.
ones who have this whole clientele structure through which you can get schemes, through which you can actually get deliveries, and all those things actually work on ground, unless there is a major kind of wave against a party or anger. So that anger is also not showing so much.
No, of course, and I have barely traveled in Haryana for this election. But Sushilji, as you would know, I traveled in Kurukshetra and Gurgaon specifically to figure out how much RSS was campaigning in this election. And from what I found on the ground was that RSS was they had their entire machinery had been activated, and they were going all out in order to campaign for the BJP this time. So, if we can take this moment just to understand how dominant is RSS as a factor in Haryana, both politically speaking and more sociologically speaking, what the professor was talking about in terms of being able to, saffronize different castes in the rural areas, urban areas, and so on. How dominant is RSS, and what was their role in this particular election?
See, in Haryana, BJP was normally a single digit party till 2014. So of course, RSS had its influence, but it was in limited pockets, not across Haryana. But yes, after 2014, things started changing. There's no doubt. And during these, from say 2019 to 24, there were several issues because of which these RSS people were not happy with the BJP. Uh, One issue was this Mihir Bhoj. Uh, Mir Bhoj, they started erecting statues of Mir Bhoj, saying that he is Gurjar Samrat. But the Rajputs were angry. They said, no, 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 Mir Bhoj is a Rajput king. So, so that also because many of the RSS people were from upper caste, so Brahmins, Rajputs, and so there was very much anger among the RSS people because of this also.
Hmm.
Uh, but I don't think that the RSS has, uh, I mean, that much of influence in Haryana as you will see in states like UP or Madhya Pradesh or Rajasthan.
Hmm, hmm, hmm. Uh, thank you, Sushilji. Professor, before I let you go, I have to ask you: do you agree with Sushilji? RSS? Do you think RSS is not that dominant a force? And also, we're joined by Ejaz Ashrafani. We will shortly speak to him about the elections in Jammu Kashmir. But over to you, Professor. Do you think RSS is as dominant a factor, or is it this in larger phenomenon of deras and through which this process of saffronization is operates in Haryana?
Yeah. See, RSS is just one organization, but there's a larger parivar. And
Hmm.
that parivar has many other organizations. They have institutions, Gita University, Gita schools. So there are many other kind of forums where it may not appear directly as RSS. And many of these deras also, have influence of Vishwa Hindu Parishad. So there are many other fraternities through
Hmm.
which that agenda has been growing. And this religion, wherever in some sense it's organized, there are obviously spontaneous religiosity, which is not necessarily political, but there are
Hmm.
also other kind of processes, education, and other kind of mobilities which also produce anxiety, and people are going towards religious identities. But more importantly perhaps is the caste factor, in the manner in which we were talking about Jat versus non-Jat, and that
Hmm.
seems to have worked much more. In some sense it created anxiety among non-Jats because of very kind of visible Jat consolidation with the Congress and with Huda. That seems to be the better explanation, if one has to find an explanation immediately.
Okay. All right.
But all
Thank you
these
so
factors
much.
come together. It's not one single factor. There would be many others. The people would
Yes.
have worked on ground. But yes, RSS in rural Haryana has never been so strong. But it has entered. It was absent
Hmm.
earlier until 2014 or a little before that. But now it is
Hmm.
not absent. You would find some kind of elements in some areas. They have covered much larger ground. Earlier it used to be just in urban pockets and mostly among Punjabis.
Yeah. No, in fact, from what they were saying, they said that we literally there in at least 50% of the villages now in
Yeah,
Haryana.
they are
So
there.
that's a claim we should investigate now, especially given these results. But thank you so much for joining us, Professor. It was an absolute delight to speak with you.
Thank you very much. I have to go for my class, so I'll be
No, no,
exiting.
I
Yeah.
understand. Thank you. Thank you, Professor. Welcome, Ejazji. We're quickly now going to shift our focus to Kashmir, where the results have somewhat been predictable. Definitely not the shock we're seeing in Haryana, not the surprise we're seeing in Haryana. What are your two sort of first takeaways from the results here?
Thank you, Sanil. Thank you for having me here. Yeah, I think by and large, it has been on the expected lines, what we are seeing now. And if these trends hold on, and I think by this time, it's like a period of consolidation. Not, I don't think much is going to change. And we are seeing a sort of alliance, NCA Congress alliance coming, are able to form the government. I think two or three things that have been very clear during this whole campaign and before this was one narrative that alliance has been focusing on is actually on the question of downgrading the Jammu and Kashmir into union territory and not having its own government. I think that narrative has worked well. NC has been able to project itself as a force which will fight for the identity, for the statehood of Jammu and Kashmir, and which, in a way, has not surrendered to the center in terms of securing the rights or accepting
Unlike the
what has happened
PDP,
to the.
unlike the PDP, their narrative was that unlike the PDP, we have no compromise. It is what their
Well, yes,
narrative.
I mean,
We, s- hmm,
post 29 August 2019, even PDP has been trying hard and has sort of distanced itself from the decisions that have been taken after the August 5. But because of the fact that it was in alliance with the BJP government till then, perhaps it is not able to come out of that shock,
yeah.
or perhaps people have not no forgiven it
but
even
but do
yet
you also, do you
for what it did.
indeed the case, because when we were on ground, uh, voters seem to really have that grievance against PDP, that these are the people who kind of allowed the post 2019, post August events to unfold, and they have been reduced to 5 seats from the trend. So do you think what do you think is the future of the PDP now?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. As I said, that they tried their best post abrogation. They tried their best to say that we are not with this, and even their party had to suffer a lot. But still, that has not helped them to overcome the overarching that psyche, or that understanding among the voters that here is the party who in a way said the bringing North Pole and South Pole together and other things,
Yeah,
and essentially they are argued that this is the party that paved the way for BJP into the Kashmir, into Jammu and Kashmir, and whatever unfolded after that, although PDP may not agree with that, but then they are somehow part of that process. So that has been a very important factor, and I don't think PDP in this election would have, expected any miracles. They are only, fighting a battle of survival, that we can say. That even
hmm,
if they get 6, 7 seats somewhere, they will still take a sort of a consolation prize that we still are not completely, decimated. We still have this is a sort of a, they were making a new beginning in that
hmm,
case, because remember that PDP completely was decimated in terms of its leadership, other things. Everybody went out of the PDP, so they have to rebuild. And in any case, they would not have expected much from this election, but it is largely a term of sort of a saying that we are also here, and somehow staking a claim
yeah,
in on 5, 6, 7 seats
right,
to build the party and reorganize for future. But certainly the verdict is very clear. It seems
yeah,
national conference has done its best
yeah.
from what it was from 2014,
Right.
and the
So
narrative, as I said.
I actually do want to ask you specifically about Umar Abdullah, and I'm also joined by my colleague Saurav Roy Burman, and I want to actually ask you both this question about Umar Abdullah. And Ajazi, if you can answer the question politically, and Saurav, you administratively for us. Uh, Ajazi, first, what does Umar's sort of comeback of sorts? Because just in the Lok Sabha election, we saw that he lost his own seat. So, what does this comeback of sorts tell us about his personal brand, his own politics, and his comeback?
Yes, I think it's absolutely very significant for Umar Abdullah. What happened in Parliament, although it's always that parliamentary election and what happens during the Parliament is different from the Assembly election always. But obviously, Umar Abdullah being the president of the National Conference, CM face for National Conference, what he suffered in the parliamentary election was a shock to him. Certainly, was not that much surprising if you were on the ground, because again you have to see that at that point of time the vote was somehow a sort of a resistance vote in terms of the fact that engineer Rashid was in jail, and it was something like a sympathy vote for him. But this election was more critical for Omar Abdullah, because there were speculations or apprehensions that will he be able to retain Ganderbal, and perhaps that's why he also moved to Badgam. He contested from 2 seats. They did not want to take any risk as far as Omar Abdullah is concerned, and the stature that he has and the position that he has. So that's why two seats he contested from two. And now, since he's leading from both the seats, and most certainly, probably he's winning both seats, this will be a great morale booster for National Conference and for Umar Abdullah's political future as well. This is something very significant politically speaking, both for the NC as a party and Umar Abdullah as a future CM or his own political career. Very, very significant for him.
Saurabh, of course, this is politically a very significant moment for Umar Abdullah personally as well. But as I said, administratively speaking, as the chief minister of a union territory and not a state, and of course, the promise is to bring back the statehood of Jammu and Kashmir, but we don't know when that happens. So, administratively, what are the powers that we can see Umar Abdullah as CM even possibly have?
I mean, it will be a big change for Omar Abdullah because remember in 2009 when he became the youngest CM of JNK, the state of Jammu and Kashmir. It was a state then.
Yeah,
Now it's a UT, and he will be taking over. In all likelihood, he will be taking over as the CM of the UT of JNK.
yeah.
And I don't think he would like to be a fettered CM, someone who's shackled, someone who's answerable to the LG, and say someone like Arvind Kejriwal in Delhi, the way he had to operate all these
With
years.
all his bureaucrats, with all his the entire police sort of reporting to
Right.
MHA here.
They will be essentially reporting to the center,
Yeah,
and that is one reason I think he was also initially hesitant to contest
yeah.
the assembly elections. He was not really willing to contest the assembly elections. So the first thing I am sure he would like statehood to be restored at the earliest, and obviously I think that's one thing he will be pressing for after taking over as the chief minister.
Ajasji, now that the BJP, one of the main poll promises of the BJP was that if it comes to power, it will re-grant the statehood in Jammu Kashmir. How do you see that the status of Jammu Kashmir going back to a state possibly? How do you see that playing out?
Well, yes, I think even during the election, I think the process was very much laid down by the center and Home Minister and even Prime Minister himself saying that it will follow a particular chronology of delimitation, then elections, then statehood. That's why I think even during the elections, you will find that although Jammu and Kashmir being reduced from state to union territory was a very big issue. But more focus was on what happened post, administratively in terms of jobs, in terms of contracts, in terms of other issues with the Jammu and Kashmir state, rather than much focus that we are going to restore immediately statehood. Because Chief Minister knows, National Conference knows, everybody knows that even if we have a government tomorrow, we will have to wrestle it with the center. It's ultimately the center that has to give the statehood back, and that's why I think I agree with my friend that Umar Abdullah initially was very hesitant. He did not want. He said it very clearly that I don't want to be a chief minister of a state where I have to sit outside the office of the LG even for getting a file or a peon transferred. That having said that, but I think what if you look at over last week or so, the shift has been on this that center and the LG here administration, they need to respect the verdict. Whatever verdict comes, the first focus is essentially on not to any sort of try any things which will manipulate the verdict. And in that case, I think they are giving a hint to the center, to the LG administration, that we need to work cordially. And obviously it will be through that cordial atmosphere, if that is built, that state government, UT government led by Umar Abdullah, whosoever it comes, will have to negotiate with the center as far as the restoration of the statehood is concerned. And till this statehood is restored, and when it is restored,
Hmm.
from the day government takes over, if it is this alliance government, to the day the statehood is restored, I think it will be a very struggle. It will be a great struggle as far as administration is concerned, because as you said, the police is with the LG, other administrative mechanism is with the LG. There's great powers that have been given to the LG administration. So how I think it's going to be a great challenge for the new government, if it is minus BJP, that
Hmm.
how they negotiate between administrating the union territory and then also sort of having a relationship with the LG administration and the center. I think they will press immensely for restoration of statehood,
Yeah.
because it is something that will salvage their own image, that will get that, and that's something that Prime Minister has promised it, Home Minister has promised it will happen. So how now the new government, whichever government comes, how, if it is minus BJP, how they negotiate with the center and the LG administration for the restoration of the state will be something that will be watched out very keenly, whether it is
So,
in,
right.
yeah.
Sorry. Saurav, you
No,
were on
I'm saying that
ground.
the course of action, I'm saying that the course of action they will take, whether it is will be confrontational or they will try to, sort of get closer acquaintance with the LG administration and say, hey, look, whatever has happened, we are now in the power. Let's work together and do
So,
something
in
for the.
fact, it will be an unfamiliar space for even the LG. The LG has not worked with the government
Oh,
for so many years at all. So, it will be an unfamiliar territory for him also. But
absolutely.
Sort of, you were traveling in Jammu, and you did some sort of important stories from the region about how Article 370 was not as much of a factor in Jammu, yet there was on certain grounds, people in Jammu had also suffered post 2019. So, give us a peek into what Article 370 meant for the people in Jammu, and how do you see the results in Jammu?
I think, when Article 370 was scrapped in 2019, 5 years back, it meant a great deal for the people of Jammu. And the way they reacted, it was very evident that they were really welcoming of the decision. They came out on the streets, they celebrated. But 5 years down the line, what I found this time was that they were not as enthused about what happened 5 years back, because a lot happened post that, in terms of a slump in the economy, because the Darbar move was scrapped. As Mr. Wani would know, the civil secretariat used to be transferred every 6 months, and you had the civil secretariat station in Jammu that used to act as a boost for the economy of Jammu. And Jammu is essentially a trade-dominated city. It's a city of the business class, so that really affected them. And Jammu is one area, especially the urban seats of Jammu, around 24 seats in the Jammu division. So out of 43, around 20 to 24, 25 are essentially urban seats. So that is where the BJP was hoping to max out, and they were hoping to gain as many as seats as possible. Because in 2014, when last time assembly elections were held, they got some 25 odd seats in Jammu. And in Lok Sabha, they were leading in 29 assembly segments in Jammu. But if you look at the results now, they're leading right now, they're leading in 26 seats. So I
Hmm.
think, that they were hoping for a
26
bump.
overall. What is their status in Jammu?
I think, except one in Shopian, that all these leads are from the Jammu division in
Hmm.
case of the BJP.
Hmm.
That
Hmm.
is what they were expecting in any case. I think
Hmm.
they were expecting more. So
Hmm.
that is where the party has slipped.
Yeah.
All those noises about the possibility of BJP, forming a government with independents and other players. The
Yes.
fact is, they were banking on Jammu, entirely banking on Jammu.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Uh, and Raji, this entire question of independence, I'm glad Saurav brought it up. Uh, there was so much skepticism, there was so much conversation around the independence before the election. This entire narrative of the independence being the B team of the BJP. Of course, now if the numbers hold, which is the NC and Congress having about 50, leads in about 52 seats, then I don't think it will come to the independence at all. But do you think independence were at all a factor in Kashmir? Also, because I think, from my understanding on the ground, the narrative had percolated down amongst people who were also suspicious of the independence this time, as opposed to, say, the engineer Rashid phenomenon in the Lok Sabha elections. What's your assessment?
Yeah, I think first to what can I come to the question that you posed to Saurav first?
Yes.
Yes, I think as far as Jammu is concerned, or entirely. The question then did not remain just on abrogation of 370. I mean, that left aside. Okay, it was done. It is whether good or bad, whatever it is, but it was done by the parliament. It was passed by the Supreme Court. Supreme Court accepted it, and everybody accepts it. We are not going back to that. But I think the other issues, rather than scrapping off, just if you leave it at scrapping, it is fine. Nobody has any problem with that. But the downgrading of state into union territory, and particularly for Jammu region, as my friend very rightly said, issue of Darbarmu and the business. These two became very important. And as much as I could travel across Jammu and see the things, uh,
Hmm.
Darbarmu economically and in that term speaking is not as much an issue in Kashmir as it is for the Jammu. Because
Yeah.
Darbarmu, it comes to in Kashmir, it comes in summer. So it
Hmm.
comes in summer when you have schools, other things. It does not. So the employees that come to Srinagar, they don't come with families and relatives and other things. Okay. But
Yeah.
when the Zarbarmu goes to Jammu, so it goes in the winter when your
Yeah.
schools are closed, etc. And then a lot of Kashmiri families, they have their houses in Jammu also. So a lot of flow, and
Right.
then obviously having the administration there, so it was not only just administrative, but it has other things. Employees family is going because you are free, you have free time. Kashmir is freezing, you go to Jammu, have some relaxed time. So it added a lot to the Jammu central economy. And then other things that happened, like you had trains that were come from Katra and other things to the Mata Vaishno Devi shrine, etc. Now they do not stay in Jammu city, they bypass it. And even if tourists come, they will later on come to the valley. So
Yeah.
Jammu people had a very strong issue that we are not getting anything. And then Jammu, as he rightly said, is a trade hub. It controlled the wholesale trade. Kashmir was a retail place for them. Now you have people, whether it is apple trade or other things, you have people from Himachal, from Delhi, from Haryana, etc., who will now say that we don't need to trade through Jammu traders, because now we can have our land there, we can purchase
Hmm.
the
Correct.
shops, etc., we can directly trade. So Jammu in that context suffered a lot. So that's why you will find, if you do some survey, and what I have done also a couple of things them, that we did find that this Darbar move was an issue. And you will find that even BJP leaders for some period of time have not been talking about raising this issue, at least that this is our achievement, we did this. Administratively, transparency wise, that was fine. You had files, e-filing, etc., but it had the other unintended, what you can say, consequences.
Mhm.
That was
Yeah,
first.
in fact, this is something that Saurav wrote extensively about. We will have to wrap up. So quickly, if we can talk a little bit about the independence and autonomy.
Independence. Yes. I think, yes, absolutely. As much as I traveled across the Kashmir Valley and talked to people, I think labeling anyone is not good thing at all at any point of time, but it did happen. Uh, uh, and National Conference, PDP, even to the extent Sajjad Loan, they catched up on this narrative and pushed it very forcefully. That all the more these independents and small parties, they are vote cutters, and they have been planted to cut the votes of National Conference and alliance partners. So, and there was some sense across the valley that okay, even if I may not have been complete, wholehearted, a hardcore voter of NC or Congress, but this time around, let us consolidate the vote. So the more this narrative came, the more I could find this time voter more conscious. That is something very, very politically active. That even if in certain places they were the traditional followers of an independent candidate, but this time there was that no decision make, some sort of thinking that should we this time do contrary to what we have been doing traditionally and consolidate vote because we need a strong government. And yes, absolutely. And National Conference, others, PDP even joined into that. Congress joined, even Sajjad Loan joined to put this narrative that these are proxies, these are vote cutters. And then obviously BJP did not hide from this. They constantly talked about that we will work with like-minded, that when they were asked often this question that why you have not fielded, you have been boasting so much about Kashmir, what we have done from last 10 years, and they
Yeah.
have done certain things. It's not that everything has been wrong. There have been development, other things, tourism, lot has been done by the administration over a period of time. But when they also said that we did not field candidates because we have our like-minded or some candidates, so that further strengthened that opinion. And I think at the end of the day, it is that alliance could sell a narrative. They had a narrative, they put it forth, and then the voter did actually accept that narrative that was built. Engineer Rashid, like people, I think that it is my assumption just that he in jail could have been 4 3 4 seats. uh, his coming out and being on the ground, probably it went against him. He got the same effect of the same label that he is a proxy or other things. uh, so that actually did happen. And in Jammu, where Saurabh said they wanted to consolidate, I think the more basic factors played a part rather than anything else.
Oh, right. Thank you. Thank you so much, Edaji, for joining us. Thank you, Saurav. And we will leave you with a ground report from Srinagar. Our colleague Neelam Pandey is there. She's actually at the PDP office, and we were talking a little earlier about the future of the PDP. And obviously, the office in Srinagar is wearing a rather deserted look. You can have a look now.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
so much.
Thank you so much for joining.
Residency Road area. Behind me is the office of the PDP. You can see, rather than a celebratory mode, the office wears a deserted look. The party candidate and leader Iltija Mufti is trailing from Bijbehara. During the campaigning, most of the PDP leaders, including Iltija, Wahid Para, they have all maintained that BJP will emerge as the kingmaker, that they will extend support to NC and Congress if and when required. Something which Iltija Mufti yesterday categorically pointed out, that this is a decision that will be taken up later on by the party's high command. But right now, as initial trends are indicating, NC Congress may not need the support of BJP or any other party so far. They have crossed the mark required to form the government in Jammu and Kashmir as per initial trends. But as we have seen how things are changing in Haryana, we will continue to give you latest updates, but this is the situation right now. What it means for the PDP, which saw many of its leaders leaving the party. A number of them went on to form their small little alliances. What does it mean for the party's future? It had also not performed well in the Lok Sabha elections. What is the road ahead for the PDP? We will be talking to PDP leaders, analysts, and we will continue to give you updates from Srinagar.